Hey there, and welcome to the Girl Means Business podcast, the show that's all about helping photographers just like you build a thriving business without sacrificing your sanity. I'm your host, Kendra Swalls, a former teacher turned full-time photographer and marketing coach, here to fill your earbuds each week with practical tips, real-life stories, and a whole lot of encouragement. So if you're ready to dive in, let's get to it because this girl means business. Hey friend, welcome back to the Girl Means Business podcast. On today's episode, we are talking about a spicy little topic that can get people pretty riled up when it comes to talking about this for their business and especially debating this in social media groups. And that is the topic of money, honey. We are going to be diving into all the things about how to know what your price point should be for your photography sessions. This is probably one of the most popularly asked questions that I see either in my coaching clients. I get this a ton. Almost every single coaching client I've ever worked with has at one point wanted to discuss pricing. But it's also a very hot button topic in chat groups and social media groups when it comes to the photography space, because a lot of people have very strong opinions on what we should or shouldn't be doing when it comes to pricing. But the ultimate stance that I fully take and believe is that this is your business and you are allowed to run your business any way you see fit. So if you want to price your sessions at $100 or $10,000, like you do you. But I want you to have a really strong understanding of where your pricing is coming from so that you feel really confident in selling your services at that price point. So if you, like I said, if you're selling them at $100 a pop, then I want you to feel completely confident in your reasoning behind doing that. If you want to charge $10,000 for a session, I want you to feel completely confident in your reason for doing that as well. So that's why this particular topic gets a little bit dicey, because everyone has an opinion. Everyone has their thoughts and ideas on what you should or shouldn't be doing when it comes to pricing. So today's episode, I'm just going to kind of lay out what I fully believe is the baseline that you should be going off of to determine what is really important to you in your photography business, because it's going to be different based on different factors. Now, before we get into the numbers of it all, let's talk a little bit about why this kind of ties in, or how this ties into the idea of marketing, because this is a podcast focused on primarily marketing. I do talk to about business and different aspects of photography and the mental side and all those things. But a lot of times people don't think of pricing as a marketing strategy, when all of it is really tied together. It's all one big jumbled pot of branding and marketing and experience. And so your pricing is a part of that, because your ideal client, who you are trying to target in your business, is going to play a large role in your pricing decision making. I also want you to think about like the client experience aspect. What are you offering to your clients? That is going to help determine your price point and what you're willing to go up or down to in your pricing. And so all of that is a factor. And when it comes down to it, one of the things that a lot of photographers struggle with is what I mentioned earlier, is that confidence. They don't feel confident in their pricing, in their photography model that they're using, in their marketing, in so many aspects of their business, that it makes putting yourself out there and sharing your business with other people even harder, because you don't have that power behind you to stand on. I've been there. I've also seen a lot of photographers struggle with this, where they will go into situations where they're talking to somebody and they struggle to even say that they're a photographer, or they struggle to say like what type of photography they do. Or if someone asks about questions about money, it becomes a real sticking point. And they're like, well, and there's no confidence there. Whereas if you just start saying, I charge X amount of dollars, people are like, oh, okay, well, that's not really in my budget, but I will definitely refer you to my family and friends or whatever. That's fine. Like, you are not going to be in everybody's budget, and that is okay. But if you feel confident in the fact that, yes, I'm going to charge this amount of money for my sessions, and that's because I want to make X amount, or I have this foundation that I've created this number from. I did not pull this number out of thin air. That is the bottom line. We're not pulling numbers out of thin air, guys, okay? We want to actually have something sustainable, something solid that helped us create these numbers so that we know exactly what we need. So let's look at some of the factors that will help us to determine what our session price should be. The first factor I want you to consider in is your personal photography experience. If you are a brand new to the world photographer, you just got your digital camera for Christmas 2 months ago, and you are starting to learn the photography world and you love it, and you want to start charging for sessions, then you are going to probably have to take a little bit of a loss in the beginning on your sessions, because you are so new to this that you're still learning and growing. And a big piece of what people pay for when they're paying for a service is they're paying for the knowledge and experience. If I'm going to hire a plumber to come out and fix a leak in my house, and they send out the person who's been on the job for 2 days and hasn't completed all their trainings yet, I don't expect to pay a premium price. But if they're going to send out the guy with 20 years of experience who knows every and has seen every possible scenario, I'm willing to pay a little bit more for that. So you need to take in your experience level a little bit. Now, where it gets a little murky is if you're a brand new baby photographer, you're not charging $5,000 to your first session. If you're further down the road and you're like, okay, well, I've been doing this for about 2 or 3 years, and I know I'm getting better. I can see improvement. I'm learning the ins and outs of the camera and lighting and composition and all the things. My editing is really good. I have a clear vision. I feel confident in going into a session knowing that I can get something really good for these families or these clients. Then you can start to price a little bit higher, and you can bump your price point up a little bit. So, or if you're an experienced writer, if you've been doing this for 15 years and you have, extensive knowledge of the photography space and settings and lighting and the style of photography you focus on, and your editing is just top notch, then you can charge a little bit more. So your level of experience in the photography space is definitely something that you need to consider when you are starting off with your pricing idea of like, what should I be pricing and what should this be at? It will be determined in part by how long you've been doing this and how knowledgeable you are. The next aspect to consider is your location and your demographics. So based on where you are in the world and who you are trying to target is also going to play a factor in what you choose to price your sessions at. For example, I technically live in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. So the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, if you are within that zone on a map, then you are probably thinking you can price fairly decently, especially depending on what parts of the Metroplex you're located in. Because one, there's a very large population of people, diverse population of people. You have all different income levels throughout the entire Metroplex. So depending on who you're trying to target as your audience, you can target a wide variety of people. However, I personally live about 45 minutes north of Fort Worth in a very small rural town. So my pricing strategy has to be a little bit different than if I lived in downtown Fort Worth or in a very wealthy suburb of Fort Worth. Like, I am beyond the suburbs and I am now in the country. So my price points can be a little bit different because I'm targeting a different location demographic. So that is going to affect my pricing. Now, the other part of this is who am I trying to target? So independent of where I live, if my audience is high-end audience clientele, and I'm willing to drive 30, 45 minutes to an hour to get to those clientele and to market to those clientele, then I can price higher. If my clientele is people who live in the same community as me, and it's a small country town, then I'm going to have to price my services to match the demographics around me. So there's a lot of factors that are kind of fluid factors that are going to change depending on your experience, where you live, and who you are trying to target as your ideal client. So those are things that are kind of in flux depending on if that changes in your life. Now, there are things that I want you to consider that are less fluid and a little bit more like these are kind of concrete things you need to really look at. The biggest thing here is you need to know your cost of doing business. So the cost of doing business means what does it cost me on a monthly or yearly basis in order to run my business? Like what is I have to have X amount of dollars in the bank in order to actually pay my bills every single month for this business. And so knowing that is a big step in knowing what you need to charge. And I'm going to break it all down, so don't worry. But I do have a free cost of doing business calculator spreadsheet for you in the show notes. So if you're interested in downloading that, following along, or listening to this and then using that to help you figure out your cost of doing business, it's also a great thing to keep and come back to, and tracking your different session types and what you should charge for them based on your cost of doing business. So I have that for you down in the show notes. You can go click that link and sign up and get your free cost of doing business spreadsheet. So inside of there, what you're going to notice is that there's a couple of things that are the first things you want to establish. The main thing is you need to know what your monthly expenses are. So these are things that are essentially your bills for your business. So do you have insurance you pay each month? Do you have a studio that you pay for? Or do you have an office space in your house? Do you have utilities? Do you have programs or apps that you pay for? Do you have Lightroom or Photoshop or a client management system or a file management system where you're sending client galleries from? Do you plan on, having equipment expenses each month, or is that something you'll have annually? You need to calculate all of those things because that is going to tell you that you are spending this much every single month, or multiply that times 12 in every single year. And so you need to plan accordingly based on that number. So I'm going to give you an example, and I'm just going to use some round numbers here because I don't want to do fast math in my head. So let's look at some examples of how this can actually break down. Okay, so if I'm looking at the spreadsheet, I'm looking at our standard business expenses each month. And it gives you some kind of examples in the spreadsheet of what some standard business expenses might be. And then you can add in and change up and add your own in there. So let's say, for example, the first thing is studio rental. Let's say that for at least one or two of your sessions each month, you rent a studio space because you do cake smashes for first birthdays. So you know that on average, your monthly studio rental is probably around $300. It may be more or less, obviously. This is just hypothetical, but $300. Your client management system, you're coming in at $50 a month. You are spending $100 a month for, let's say, advertising. This could be advertising if you're doing Google ads or social media ads, or maybe you have an ad that you run in a local magazine, or it's to purchase, different marketing supplies each month, whether it's business cards or postcards or flyers or whatever. Website hosting, $25 a month. Insurance is, let's say $100. It's probably a little high, but $100 a month. Your gallery site's $30, and then your utilities each month for your within your business are $55. Again, these are just hypothetical numbers. I just threw some things in there, so don't hold me to these. This brings out your total monthly expenses to $660.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Let me ask you something. How many hours have you spent in your business stressing over social media, fighting with an algorithm, trying to keep up with the latest trends, and just posting for the sake of posting, only to feel like you're spinning your wheels and nobody's even paying attention? I've been there, and let me tell you, it is the worst. But I have a fun little secret for you. Did you know that you don't actually need social media to keep your calendar full? Now I know that goes against everything all of the other quote unquote experts are telling you to do in your business. But I am living proof that you do not need social media to grow your photography business. I have been successfully staying booked solid in my photography business for the last 8 years with very minimal social media use. And I am excited to show you exactly what I've been doing inside of a private podcast series. The 7-day booking blueprint is 8 power-packed episodes that you can binge all at once or listen to at your own pace. Each episode is actionable and designed to help you book more clients without relying on social media. If you're hearing this ad right now, that means that you are a fan of the Girl Means Business podcast. Thank you, by the way. But if you've ever found yourself saying, man, I wish I could just dive even deeper. I wish I could have a one-on-one sit down with Kendra and really pick her brain about all the things that she's doing in her business, then this podcast series is going to give you everything you've been hoping for. It is so packed with so much information that you are going to walk away feeling like you have the exact roadmap you need to grow your photography business. So if you're ready to hop off that social media hamster wheel and actually start seeing results in your business and start filling up your calendar, head down to the show notes and grab the link so that you can start listening right away. Now, again, keep in mind, this is going to vary for each person. So don't feel like if yours is way higher or way lower that you're doing anything wrong. It's different for every single person. Keep in mind, this didn't have anything on there for subscription-based things like if you're doing Adobe Creative Cloud, or if you have any membership programs you're a part of, or coaching programs you're a part of, like those are all, not on here. So I want you to, when you're doing this yourself, obviously you will add those things in. I just wanted to give you a very, very generic version of this for the example. So your monthly expenses are $660. Now, the next thing I want you to think about is, okay, now how much after I pay my monthly bills, how much do I actually want to make every single month? What is my take home, like owner's pay? What do I want to pay myself? Now, if you're working full-time or part-time somewhere else, and this is a part-time business, that number is going to be different than if this is your full income for your family. So I'm going to kind of go somewhere in the middle. And let's say that I want to bring home $2,000 a month. So I'm going to add that to my 660 that is my monthly expenses. So I need to make $2,660 every month in order to pay for my business and pay myself what I want to have as my income. Now, the next thing we're going to consider, so that's the money side, right? That is the very basic. This is what I'm paying, and this is what I want to pay myself. So this is how much we need to bring in each month. Now, I want to pause here for a second and talk about the mindset around this piece right here, because there are going to be times when you do this information, you fill out this sheet, and you kind of go, oh crap, that's a lot more than I thought. Like when you actually see the numbers on paper, sometimes it can feel a little intimidating because it feels bigger than maybe what you wanted. Or maybe you're looking at it going, yeah, that's not enough. Like I want to make more, or I need to be making more, or I can cut back expenses here. Like I want this to be something that you use as a tool to not only create your price point, but also to look and go, where are some areas that I can either cut back if I need to save money, or I have room to add in these other things that I've been wanting to add in, or I can pay myself more, or maybe I need to take a little bit less right now because I'm still in the beginning phases. Like this is very personal to you, which is why I want to remind you for the millionth time, these are hypothetical numbers I'm putting out here. This is not a hard and fast, like this is what you should be doing. I'm just throwing out numbers for the sake of this example. So please, please, please take this with a grain of salt, that if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, this is too much, don't panic. If you're listening to this and you're like, that's nothing, don't panic either. Like you can do this for yourself, but I want you to also be prepared for the mental block that's going to come up here, because it's probably going to come up here. Most people have some kind of mental block around money, and getting around that takes time. And this is just part of the process of actually seeing everything on paper. Okay, back to our numbers here. So if my number that I need to hit every month in order to pay for my business expenses and pay myself is 2660, the next thing I want to look at is what is my capacity for actually taking on clients each month. If I'm working full-time or part-time, or I'm a stay-at-home mom with lots of, multiple young children, then my capacity is probably going to be a lot lower than someone who has school-age kids and does photography full-time, or is an empty nester or doesn't have kids and does photography full-time. And so I want you to realistically ask yourself, how many sessions per month can I handle on average? Now, this does not mean you need to do 10 sessions every single month, but on average, how many sessions can I do per month and not feel like I am drowning in sessions and editing? So for me, that might look like I can do 2 sessions a week, because I can do a weekend and I can do a weekday, and I can do 8 sessions a month and still feel like I have time for myself and my family and I'm not losing my sanity here. So I'm going to go with 8. So I need to do 8 sessions every single month in order to meet that number. So then I'm going to take that number, the number of sessions I can do on average per month, and I'm going to divide my 2660 by that number. So if I divide 2660 divided by 8, my number comes out to $332.50. So I need to be charging at minimum $332.50 per session in order to meet my cost of doing business goals. So that to me feels very reasonable. In fact, my kind of baseline price, like the minimum amount that I will charge for a session, like a regular session of any kind, is $350. Because now I'll put a little asterisk there saying that most of my sessions are priced well above that. But my minimum of, if a friend calls me and says, hey, my family's all in town for my niece's birthday next weekend, will you come take family photos for us? My minimum is $350. To get me out the house with my camera in hand is $350. So, and I know that, and I got to that number because of figuring out my cost of doing business. I knew that I needed at least $350 per session in order to feel like, one, that my time is worth me getting out and doing the job. 2, because I do have to drive quite a bit to get to my sessions because of where I'm located. I factor that in. I factor in the drive time and the gas cost and all the things. So all of that is taken into play when I consider how much I'm going to charge bare minimum for my sessions. Now, the nice thing about this number is if you get this number and you kind of go, oh, well, I'm actually charging $500 for my sessions. That's awesome. That either means that you can take on less sessions, or you can make more than what your baseline is per month. If you're looking at this going, ooh, I'm only charging $150 a session, no wonder I'm always struggling to make ends meet and pay off all my bills. I need to be charging more. So either way it can go. It can either say like, hey, I need to reconsider how much I'm charging. I am doing really well and I can actually cut back the number of sessions or make more. Or you're in that sweet spot of like, I'm pretty good. I'm good where I'm at. Like I can kind of grow from here. But knowing your cost of doing business is the first step in figuring that out. Now, obviously, you are going to probably ask the question, because I hear it coming, well, what if I have different session types? Or what about for mini sessions? Or what if I do newborns and that requires more time and more hands-on approach versus like a maternity session where it's quicker and easier? You can price those accordingly. And on the cost of doing business worksheet that I have for you linked in the show notes, it actually has a little kind of a calculator of sorts for different session types. So you can factor in all those different factors for each session type. If you know that your newborn sessions, you're going to have a studio fee, you're going to have props you have to pay for, lighting you have to pay for, time that goes into it, versus a maternity session, which you're probably going to have less time. You might still have some props or clothing or, dresses and things, but you might have location fees. You might have travel time. So you can factor all of those things in on that sheet, and it will help you to identify your cost of doing business for each type of session so that you're not just looking at, well, that's that's great for one price, but what about these other offshoot things or these other types of sessions? It all gets broken down in there for you as well. So I know this was a very, very simplistic version of how to figure out your pricing. And there's a little bit more that goes into this that I will get into in other episodes about the mental aspect and kind of the things that can come up that are going to be a little bit unique to different situations, how to share your pricing, all of that stuff we'll cover in future episodes. But I wanted this episode to be very broad and very kind of overarching of how can we get you to really understand your numbers and your base point and your cost of doing business so that you have a really solid foundation for knowing what you need to be charging for each of your sessions. So I hope that this helped you to get there. And don't forget to head down to the show notes and grab your free cost of doing business spreadsheet. Make sure you make a copy of it and save it somewhere, rename it to your business name, but then you can use that to go back to each time you come up with a new session that you want to offer, or you're thinking about raising your prices. You can use that to help you determine a baseline and a really good strategy for coming up with those pricing point numbers. All right, guys, thank you so much for being here. If you found today's episode really helpful and inspiring, or you learned something incredible from it, I would love for you to share that with a friend, put it out on social media, spread the love for the Girl Means Business podcast. It means so much when y'all share with your friends, with other photographers, into Facebook groups. So if you found this really helpful, please, please, please share this episode with the rest of the world. Thank you so much for being here this week, and I will see you back here next week, same time, same place.